Hey everybody, what up? Scuff D here. And it's a little overdue, but last week, 2 weeks ago, I held a week-long poll, and I finally got the results together, finally had some time to sit down and go through it, so let's get into it here. Today, we're going to be going over the top 5 cards that the player community feels need to be improved. Not cards that needed nerfing or reworking for reduction or refinement. Basically, the first and last poll I did, which was top 5 neutral cards that are must play or most preferred. Top 5 favorite neutral cards, I think it was. Top 5 neutral cards. Player vote. Well, that got me thinking, what about the cards that don't get played? More importantly, outside the neutral pool, what cards are there that just don't have enough, or that the majority of people think need to be improved? And so I put that out there. That was the poll. Any card, including Warlords, was up for open. The requirement just basically being, what did you think were the top 5 cards that needed improvement in the game, that need to be improved? It needed to be, whether it was via reworking or minor tweaking, whatever it is, that just don't feel good at all and that need to be improved to even be attractive to players to include in their decks. Unfortunately, I didn't get as many votes or results as I did on the last poll, and I don't know if that was just the topic or the timing. A lot of people were squeezing in for the event, and we're kind of in that flux here, waiting for news about the Space Wolves and the Thousand Suns and Prospero Burns expansion. So I'm not really sure, but my first poll, I think I got close to 50 votes, and I think this time around I got about 12. So significant reduction. So I'm going to go through the list based off of what those 12 people thought. And this is pulled off of Discord. I put that out there all week long. If you disagree with any of these cards on the list, that's okay. You can have your opinion. This was a player vote. And next time, if I throw it out there and you're on Discord, get your votes in, because that's how I make these lists. That's how it matters. Otherwise, someday somebody's going to watch this and think that these are the top 5, and I don't entirely disagree. So, you might not either, but just the same. So, what are they? Well, let's start at the bottom, shall we? Let's go to the card pool here, the collection, not my decks. Although, just as I prefer to do here, let's just go into deck slots. I'm really looking forward to the next expansion, Prospero Burns, giving me 2 new rows of deck slots to fill up this empty space here. You can't see it, but I'm just like touching this empty space here, just hoping to have more deck slots. We need more deck slots. You don't know it, but you need them. You do. So the first card needing to that players felt was worth or required reworking comes out of the Iron Hands card pool, and believe it or not, it's the Storm. Now, the Storm is interesting. The Storm is very meme worthy. A lot of people like to make meme decks for it. It's not a card that you can include in every deck, or as a 2 of in every deck, or even worth really playing most of the time. The Storm is actually one of, if not the only card currently that gives your opponent a benefit, that your opponent directly benefits from. The Storm. Your troops gain frontline, survivor 1. Enemy cards cost 5 less until your next turn. You don't play this card if your opponent has at least 4 cards in hand. That's just not a good idea. They can dump their entire hand, and while part of the strategy sometimes is you play the Storm, your opponent dumps their hand, and then you Fall of Gardenal and kill everything they've got. Now they're just playing off of the top deck. That doesn't necessarily work in the day's meta, where there's cards that draw cards, or if you don't have any troops yourself on the ground, then you're not doing any justice. And if your opponent has a 4 or 5 card, 6 card hand, or cards that draw cards, those cards that are drawn are still reduced by the cost of this. I think at one point there was an event I played, and it was a good game. It was a close game. It was Duquesne versus Duquesne, and he played the Storm, and that let me play Fall of Guard. Captured Forge for 1, which then let me create new vehicles in my hand, which also cost 5 less plus 2 less. And so basically I was able to dump 6 units, beefy units, onto the board. He had 2 troops that had Frontline and Survivor 1. He had 2 cards in hand, and I still had like 3 cards in hand, and it just wasn't good. It wasn't a fun time for him, and it was not a good play. And that's the most memorable thing I can say about the Storm. There are people who have won from Storm, giving that frontline troop or a troop frontline and Survivor 1, just making them a little bit more durable, but it's not a good card. It's not. I know there are people out there who love it, who love to cry, who love to raise the Storm, but I disagree. I think, and some people have recommended, I think the effect isn't terrible, but I do think that the benefit that giving the opponent, maybe having it where their tactics cost 5 less, or just specifically their troops, one or the other, as opposed to all of their cards, or even having it where it costs 3 less, which is not as severe. 5 less is just huge. I mean, you could play this on the first turn of the game if you get it, and your opponent can dump their entire hand. It's not a smart thing to do. I don't know why you would do that. And then the fact that it's an epic, which means that you could include 2 of these in your deck, makes you wonder why. Why would you? You don't draw cards from it. You don't do damage with it. You don't gain a troop from it. It's just not good. Thematically, it's an interesting story, the story of the Storm and the Hammer. If you haven't checked it out, look up Wikipedia. Look it up. It's Duquesne's achievement, and that's why he wants to raise the Storm so badly. But no. So I don't entirely disagree with this. It's a number 5 out of the people who made their selections. Most of them included this on their list. So there you go. Now, number 4, we're actually venturing out of the Iron Hands card pool into the Iron Warriors card pool, and we need to look no further than Barb Falk. Now, I will say this. The poll that I put up was prior to Kazrim's Falkening video, and kind of him delving into that deck. I didn't feel that Falk needed to be reworked. I think Falk's pretty neat, very combo-y, very memey, and the Falkening deck is kind of taking that to the extreme. I think there's a couple other mid-range ways to make that work, and I've seen, I think, one of his event decks. I think one time I played an event, and he did 22 damage in 1 turn, and it was very much similar to the same combo, using him with Goldstones and Firewalkers and such. I mean, a lot of potential. So I was kind of surprised. I think people still don't give him credit, but I'm glad that Kazrim really got that out there. And if you haven't checked it out, look up Kazrim's video. I'll see if I can figure out how to link things on my page, and I'll put up his video or a link to his page. It's a fun deck. I don't want to say it's a one-trick pony, but it kind of is a one-trick pony, but it's a one-trick pony that does a trick very, very well. And that's what Falk is, and he's not a long-term player. You have to take that you have to take that damage, and then, just like the Iron Warriors, you deal it fast. But a lot of people feel that Barb Falk needs to be reworked, needs to be improved. There's not a whole lot of suggestion in terms of how you would improve him, potentially with a passive, because the fact that his ability, you could go a whole game and not use his ability. That's entirely possible. Maybe he needs a passive. Maybe he needs, something else. Maybe it needs to cost 1 instead of 2, which I think would be a little bit over. No, that's just not a good idea. I don't know. And again, that's just the small pool of people who voted. So, I think there's some people who didn't think that necessarily, and I hope that there's more people that don't think that. I think Barb Falk, really any warlord is winnable. Even Ingathil right now It's hard to do, but it's entirely possible. And I think Barben Volk is a prime example of people just not willing to test or put the time in. He has bad matches, definitely. Everything does. But he can win too very easily. He's got access to the high damage output of the Iron Warriors card pool. That alone is awesome, and it buys you the time that you need to set up that brutal Falkening combo. And if you're not sure what it is, I'll just say it involves this card and this card, and there's a couple more that help the combo, and him. That's it. That's it. That's all you need. Oh, 2 cards out of 30. Make it happen. It's possible. And check it out. Check it out. It like I said, there's a few other ways to kind of build upon that and improve it. I think Falk is winnable. And I disagree. I disagree. I don't think he should be in the top 5 here. I think he's fine. But this is the player vote. Those were the results. So if you disagree, get your votes in next time. Make it happen. Make it so. Yeah, I said that. Number 3, we're going back into the Iron Hands. Number 3, card that needs the work, needs to be improved, is the Hammer. And this has been on my list for a long time. I don't know if this is my number 1. This might be my number 1. I think this is my number 1. I don't play the Iron Hands a whole lot, but this is a legendary. This is a 7-cost legendary, and it's terrible. It's not good. I don't know the number of times I've played it as it's been included in event decks, and I've drawn a 1-cost or a 2-cost card. So I'm paying 7 to draw a card and deal 2 damage to all enemy troops, not even to the opponent's warlord. Now, the effect is worth noting that, I mean, for balance purposes, if you drew a 9 and you dealt 9 damage to your opponent's warlord, that's not very fair. But as a 7-cost effect and as a very hard to pull off, I mean, that's total luck. And compared to some of the other cards that we're seeing, Conjurador, Perfection's Flight, Harrowing, I don't think it shouldn't be considered. I think this needs to be improved. I think this card deserves it. If it's going to be legendary and it's going to cost me 7, then it better benefit me. Massively so. I would prefer, personally, I think one way to do it, if it's not going to target the opponent's warlord, then I would rather have it draw 2 cards and then deal damage equal to the combined cost. It gives the Iron Hands 2 cards, which they don't have a whole lot of card drawing, so it gives them that. And then it also gives them a wider range to range anywhere between 3 to 7 on average damage across the board, which is still crazy powerful. But really what that is that's just a legendary version of Fall of Gardenal to a slight refined point, and that's the whole point of the rarity evolution. You've got common, you've got rare, you don't have an epic necessarily unless you count the storm, and as we've already talked about, I wouldn't count that. And you've got the hammer. That's how the Iron Hands should progress. That's how the damage should progress, and I really hope that the hammer gets reworked. It needs it. It doesn't have to be over the top broken, but it does need to be improved. It's just not great. I'm sorry, it's not great, and I agree. I would probably rank this as my number 1. Like I said, definitely a card that needs to be improved. I hope one day we see that it has been improved. Now, number 2, we're going back into the Iron Warriors. Are you seeing a pattern here? We've seen 2 cards from the Iron Warriors, 2 cards from the Iron Hands, Forge Breaker. And this is another 7-cost tactic. It's not, on the surface, its effect is not bad. Give +2 to your warlord. That's essentially 2 Gore Childs in 1 for 1 card at 7 for an elevated cost. But, and it's a big but, the fact is the Iron Warriors don't need it. They're that 7 can be better spent on other things, on direct damage and such, and it just doesn't seem to work with them necessarily very well. I think if Forgebreaker added a passive which improved the health of vehicles, or passive that improve the health of frontline or reduce the health of frontline, or a rally or a relentless effect that destroyed a frontline, or something of that nature. I think Forgebreaker would be not always a staple auto-include in the Iron Warriors decks, but would be more considered, because as it is right now, it's a joke. It's not good. And it's not worth the 7 energy. As an Iron Warriors player with 7 energy, I'd rather do drop a troop and play viral bombs, or play Rack and Ruin and prep Perturabo's ability, or play Perturabo's Wrath, or there's so many more cards that just are going to get me more immediate effects, do more damage than just putting +2 attack on my Warlord. It's nice for a defensive, because not too many cards are going to survive attacking your 4 attack Warlord, but that doesn't do anything to give longevity to your Warlord. It doesn't do anything to give longevity really, or immediate damage, unless you're going to close out the game and you need that +2, and really the Iron Warriors have so many other ways to do it for cheaper. So number 2. Number 1, the number 1 player vote for a card that needs to be improved actually comes from the Sons of Horus. And yes, it's Abaddon's Chosen. And I don't entirely disagree with that. I don't think it's number 1. I would probably put it in my 5, but I wouldn't put it in number 1. But everybody across the board, there was enough votes, whether it is as a 1 or 2 or 3, that just moved this up, just edged it into the number 1 slot. Everybody thinks that this card can be better. And I think you only see it in event decks, if you see it at all, which it's nice when you use it that one time in the event, but you're never going to include it in your deck if you have the choice between this and other cards. Giving shield to a friendly trooper and drawing a card, that's all it does for 4. As a starter, as a new player, if you have this, that might not be so bad. That might be something to wow you. As you go on and your collection gets improved and you realize that that's not, there's so many damage cards, damage effects, rally effects that just can ping that shield away. It's not so great for 4. You're basically playing 4 to draw a card, and there's so many cards that are 2 or 1 to draw a card. I think if Abaddon's Chosen cost was reduced to 2, maybe even 3 with the same effect, I'd be perfectly okay with it. Or if it kept its cost at 4 and it gave a shield to your friendly Astartes, it would see a huge upswell potentially of play amongst like Taric decks, or even Horus decks. You could swing Horus outside of the Firewalkers deck and into a drop pod troop deck. It'd be pretty. You might have to up the cost to 5 at that point, but a very good card. But it's not right now. It's not, and everybody who has voted felt the way, and maybe if you're watching this, you feel the same way too. So hopefully this is another card that they change, that they improve. And I don't think it needs a radical improvement. It does need a minor improvement. Now, with so few votes, there's really only like one card that I could say had an honorable mention, and that is Discipline out of the Emperor's Children. With the variety of healing cards in the game, and the fact that the Perfection effect, it's a cost 4, and you're usually just paying 4 to heal 1 or 2 to your Warlord, when you can do so much more with that. It's not great. It's not a good epic. It's not worth buying in the shop if you see it. It's usually generated by Fulgrim's ability, and then you kind of throw it away at the end of the game if it's either going to keep you alive for one more turn, or if you got nothing else to do. It very rarely comes in handy for that Perfection effect, because usually you would rather play a troop to gain a Perfection or a better effect, such as Pride of the Emperor, as opposed to Discipline. It could be improved a few different ways, but I would urge caution with it, because it's in the Emperor's Children's card pool, and improving too many of their cards that work so well together would be not a good idea. You could reduce its cost to 2. You could increase the healing that it does to 2 to your Warlord for every enemy, as opposed to 1, and that might not be as bad of a turnaround, because you could gain potentially 14 health off of 4. You might think that that's bad, but if they've got Discipline in their deck, then they're not in the best shape if they're playing Discipline anyways. So I don't know, but that's the honorable mention. That's the closest thing like I said, I received. I did not get as many votes as I was hoping to get. Oh, the reinforcements are here. This is the new. It's gonna kick me out and make me re-log in here. That's all right. That's okay. We'll get this in here. Come on now. There we go. And then it'll download, and we'll get reinforcements for the event. I'm kind of curious who it's going to be. Reinforcements. Tarvitz and Erlin, while Axmund and Fabius Bile. All right, there you go. We'll have to dive into that. And event changes. Except no longer starts with an extra card, and Kazrim now has high initiative and heals 2. Ooh, Julius Kazrim is going to be. Ooh, that's gonna be problematic for people. Interesting. Okay, I've got some stuff to look into here. Very interesting changes. I don't think we expected that for Axe Sub necessarily, but Kazrim is gonna have some stuff open up for him. I'm gonna have to go into the Discord here and see what other changes are coming up. Totally sidetracked and sabotaged here at the end. But that's the top 5 player votes for cards that need to be improved in the game as of May 3rd, 2019. But scale it back a week because that's when I made the votes. And granted, there's been no updates to these cards since then, although I do think people might be reconsidering Barb and Falk, and I really hope they do. I really hope they do because he's got potential. So that is it for me. I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to keep it sweet, and I'm going to take a look at some of these updates here and see what we've got, what's happening, how Kazrim is rolling, and we'll get back to you. So thanks for watching. Keep playing Legions, and if you see me in Discord next time putting out a poll and you want to have your votes heard, please vote, because that's how these things happen. If I'm not going to get too many votes, then it kind of defeats the whole purpose of saying it's a player top 5, and it's really just like 5 guys who think that they had the time to actually put in the opinion. And I know there's more than 5 to 10 guys out there on Discord who've got opinions. So like to hear from you, and we shall see how things going. So talk to you later. All right, bye.